What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 83 of the Club and Sub podcast coming off a fun UFC Vegas 272. Things mostly went according to plan, I believe. We're back here, episode number 83. We got a lot of bets on this card, I think, for myself. I think Lags has a bunch. I think Luke has a bunch as well. It's a fun card, good card for dogs. It's the kind of card that I'm probably either going to win 10 units on or lose 10 units on. Hopefully the former. We'll see. But yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So, guys, if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. As usual, got me, John at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR underscore betting, and Lags at Danny underscore Lags. We'll be your guides for this. Guys, any thoughts on the card before we jump in? Luke, anything?
It's fun. I think 10 of 14 fights are projected to end ITD, so we should see a lot of violence. I think there's a lot of live dogs on the card too, which I'm assuming we'll get to. So, yeah, fun action, bro.
Lags, how about yourself?
I will say I was just looking at the card from like top to bottom just way before we got on, and I was thinking, to be honest, I think the prelims are pretty like garbage. To be honest, I think they're pretty low level, and I think there's just much better betting spots on like the main card. Personally,
Yeah.
Those are fun though, Legs. We love our garbage though.
We do. I just don't like betting on garbage at times.
That's my favorite kind of bets to make, to be honest with you. So, without further ado, we'll jump right in here. First fight of the night, we got Azamat Murzakanov. He is making his UFC debut, I believe. He's taking on Tafon Nchukwi, coming off probably the best performance of his career against Mike Rodriguez. Luke, what do you think here?
I kind of think Tafon's alive, to be honest. I know that's probably a hot take, but my thing is that we still don't know a ton about Murzakanov. Obviously, he's kind of one of those weird Russians. I wouldn't say like coast Russians, but he kind of plays, southpaw outside, bouncing in and out, sniper-like nature where he's killed a bunch of guys. But his strength of competition is extremely low. And then you go to his wrestling, he laid on that Brazilian Guto Inocente, who just gassed after about a couple minutes in the fight. So it's like, how much can we really take from that? And you go to his Contender Series fighting, this ridiculously long James Vick, esque type guy who's got tall man's defense. He clocks him in 2 to 3 minutes. So my thing is, what happens if the guy does not kill this dude in Tafon, who's proven to be pretty durable, historically, has taken some good shots over the years too, and a guy who's also going to come forward. And I think that's an interesting point to note for the fight. Who has came forward on Murzakanov? Nobody's came forward and really thrown strikes at the guy ever. So we don't really know how he reacts, but he actually did get dropped in one of his fights against an 0-3 dude, I think 2 to 3 years ago, which can't be ignored as well. My concern with Tafon is how bad he looked on bottom against Park. I think we actually all cashed on Park at like plus 130 or something in that particular spot. But my thing is that there's just a lot of questions on this dude. So if he does not kill Tafon, if he can't just wrestle fuck Tafon when we don't have a large body of data of him going out there and wrestling, once again, he's not the wrestler, or I should say the Russian, to go out there and dive on legs for 15 minutes in the aggregate. How does the fight play? I don't know. I kind of think Tafon is a live dog to weather the storm. If I was to bet the fight, I think the over, even at chalk, is probably a good play at like minus 160, and you're banking on the Tafon durability, in my opinion. That's how I'd play it personally.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really hate that look at the over 1.5. I would say similar to our good buddy Magic. I think I guess, to use his words, I would say Azamat, I think, is a huge fraud, to be honest with you. I think he does a lot of similar techniques on the feet. Like, he's looking for that like looping overhand left and just looking to get to the clinch, look for his takedowns. But I don't, like you said, Luke, I don't think there's a huge body of work for those takedowns. So it's like at minus 185, it's tough really laying that. But at the same time, I don't think Tafon's anything special either. So it's just kind of a pass fight for me.
Yeah, it's a weird fight. I mean, Murzakanov is a guy that I'm like actively looking to fade. And when I first went to look at this fight, I bet Jared Bandera against Murzakanov before that got canceled. I bet Felipe Lynch against him before that got canceled. And when I first went to look at this, it was minus 110 at that side, and I was pretty sure I'd be betting Tafon. the problem for me is like Stefan's a guy I guess I'm like reasonably bullish on. Like for a light heavyweight, his output's obviously absurd. He seems to have pretty good cardio. He's a decent athlete, but he's also just a very, very green fighter. And when looking at this fight, it's like, yeah, if they stand on the feet for 15 minutes, I feel pretty good about Stefan's durability here and about his ability to pace Murzakanov in this fight. But like Luke touched on it, it's not just round 3 against Park where he got held down and beat up that concerns me. It's when he got taken down against Pickett. It's the other times he's defended takedowns against Park. I don't really like he just doesn't seem to have a good understanding positionally of what to do when someone's attempting a takedown or when he's on his back. And like, to Luke's point, I don't think Guido Innocente means it terribly much, but it's like I keep seeing if he gets in there and gets Stefan down, it's like, do I have faith he gets up? Like, not really. And that's kind of a concern. Now we're getting out to a point, though, where it's like, will I play him at plus 150? Probably not. But, like, if it keeps pushing and it pushes up to like plus 180, plus 185, I'll probably take a poke. Just because it's like, I'm with you, Luke. I don't really think Murzakanov likely has to get the gas to go attempt 10 takedowns here, and if that's the case, I kind of think Stefan can take over if he doesn't get finished on the mat, but the grappling.
And if Stefan stuffs, what happens?
Right, exactly, and I'm with you. And that's the other part. He's young enough where it's like him suddenly making a huge improvement since when did he fight Park? About a year ago? About that, right? Yeah, making a big improvement at 24 years old over a year wouldn't be terribly surprising, but. Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably passing it. I if it gets to plus 185, I'll take a poke, but I'm not passionate about it. Moving on though, we got a banger here. We got Guido Connetti. He's taking on Chris Moutinho. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
I think it's an interesting fight. I know we were just talking about it before we hopped on here, but I think it's a really volatile fight because I feel like this could go a ton of different ways. I could see, Moutinho's forward pressure, get and volume getting and winning himself a decision over 15 minutes. I could also see, him knocking out Connetti. His durability hasn't looked great recently. His cardio hasn't looked great recently. But like, I don't know. To me, this could also look like a war that just ends up going 15 minutes. These guys land hard strikes on both sides, and to me, I just think this is a coin flip type of fight, and I just really want no interest in it. If anything, I'd be looking maybe at the under, but it's a pass.
My initial thoughts were I was going to bet Connetti here just because, like, I kind of think Chris Moutinho is getting credited as being something he's not because he survived for 14 minutes with Sean O'Malley. But it's like, go look at his regional tape. There's a reason everybody and their mother were betting O'Malley to finish in round 1 in that fight. Like, Moutinho's not a very good fighter. He's aggressive. He keeps a high output, but he's remarkably hittable. I actually think he's kind of fragile, even though he didn't get put out till late by O'Malley. Look, I mean, chins are some of those things that just tend to be kind of fluky. Like Marcin Prachnio got knocked out 3 rounds in a row and then traded bombs in the pocket with Cleo Roundtree, right? Who knows? Like
Marc-Andre Barrios recently in the last fight.
Right, exactly. Like that kind of stuff kind of fluctuates fight to fight. But it's like the tape of Moutinho regionally made everything KO'd fast. The thing is with Guido, he's 42 years old, and it's like even though I don't mind that he's 2-5 in his last 7 fights. That's not the kind of thing that typically bothers me, except those 2 wins have come over a 9-year span, which isn't really something that's encouraging. He is 42. He is fragile himself. And as you said, gassy. And it's like, I do think he ticks a lot of boxes for what I look in an underdog. I bet him against Mano Martinez in his last fight, but I kind of think he's washed. I am on the under, though. Look, here's the reality. Jeffrey just said it in chat. Arlovsky regrew his chin after he got finished in the first round 4 fights in a row, right? So, but like, the funny thing about this under, like, it's plus money right now. And like, we all looked at it before we went on, but it was minus 250 when Guido fought Mano Martinez in his last fight, which is kind of, that was probably a wild line. But a lot of people were betting Mano by KO in that spot. Guido had been finished inside of 2 rounds, 3 straight fights. And now it's plus money when Chris Moutinho has been finished 4 or 5 times in his career as well. Neither guy has any defense. The one thing I do think Moutinho is reliable again to do is push a pace into the pocket. Guido, whatever you want to say about him, he's actually a pretty decent hitter. He's hurt a bunch of guys in his career. I think the under here should be priced out at like minus 150, not at plus money. So I'm going to probably play it here. Or I did play it here, I should say. Luke, what are your thoughts?
I am going to bring out the Simpsons pitchforks. I play Moutinho here. I actually played him at minus 135. I know people are going to hate me for it, but I'm fine with it. Honestly, it's a primary fade on Connetti. I did a pretty deep dive back into tape on it as well. Connetti, when he's won his UFC fights, it's primarily based on wrestling-based success. That's how he's won. He's getting takedowns. But even in the situations that Moutinho's getting taken down, he's been able to get up. And if you go back and watch his fight with Blackshear, who's a guy who's pretty known, at least on the regional scene, to be a pretty good grinder, was able to get, into some dominant positions on the dude. Dude was able to scramble up and get out of those positions pretty consistently too. And I just don't think Connetti's going to be able to do that. And the problem with Connetti is, even if you go back to, his last fight, kind of just played the outside in the back foot. And that's why he won the first round against Mana Martinez, because Mana Martinez did absolutely nothing. Chris Moutinho is going to do things here. I 100% agree that, he's been hurt. He's been finished. He's been knocked out in multiple fights. But honestly, when he's been getting finished, it's not going out, I wouldn't say hard at all. Like, it's doctor stoppages, guys coming in. It's TKOs. Like, he's not getting flatlined by any of these guys either too. So I think he's going to put a pace on Connetti, and I am down to fade a 42-year-old guy who stands behind the black line, against a guy who's going to go forward on him and give him some issues, who a guy in Moutinho is not going to be easy to hold down at all. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds stupid. I'm fine with it, but I think I'm going to be sitting pretty at the end of this one. I think it's a good fade on Connetti, to be honest.
I don't think it sounds crazy at all. Yeah. It is not my cup of tea, but you make a pretty good case for it. I mean, look, I don't think any of us would ever try to make an impassioned case for Guido Connetti being UFC level, So, I don't completely hate it. Moving on, though, we got another interesting one. We got Cody Brundage. He's coming off a loss by his debut, Nick Maximoff, taking on Dolce Lujambula, Dolce champion, coming off a loss to Marc-Andre Barrio that I think we all cashed on, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of an interesting fight, to be honest. If you could promise me that Brundage was going to fight the most optimal fight for him here, I think he can dominate Dolce. I actually rate Brundage's wrestling quite a bit. I think he's a pretty good wrestler. He's pretty athletic and he's strong as an ox, and he's a decent submission grappler. And if he came out here with the game plan of, okay, I'm going to come out here and attempt 10 to 15 takedowns here, I think he would completely wipe Dolce, to be honest. The problem is that's not really – he doesn't always do that. You look at his last fight in LFA, and he spent a large chunk of that fight striking, and he actually got hurt a couple times in that fight. He holds his hands really, really low. And the truth is, while he might have an activity edge on Dolce on the feet, Dolce hits really hard, and he's really fast. I don't really rate much of Dolce's game, and I don't rate his judo. I mean, look, he's got good judo, but we all know judo is somewhat questionable in MMA, and I think the chances of Dolce out-grappling Brundage after what we've seen, it's kind of funny extrapolating it out how well the performance against Maximov aged. But, Maximov's obviously a great grappler, and Brundage more than held his own in that fight. And he's a credentialed wrestler himself. I'm not even sure Dolce's stronger, but he does hit hard. And it's like one of these things where he's much more experienced. He's fought more guys in the UFC. I don't yet feel like I have an idea of how good Brundage's fight IQ is. It's the kind of fight where it's like, if he comes in with the right game plan, he should dominate this fight. But I don't totally trust him to do it. So I'm passing it. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Brundage is the side personally, but for a lot of your points, it's kind of a weird fight. If he dives on legs, I think that's probably the best path, because I think he is the better wrestler grappler in the fight. But I do think there are like explosive athleticism advantages for Dolce that I also think he kind of could just die, in this fight. But it's weird because Dolce's had like actual wrestling based success on multiple guys, but I don't see him having that on Brundage really at all. It's just what's the approach and what's the path, for Brundage overall. Because even when he fought William Knight, I think we might have both bet Brundage there in that fight. We're like, yes, Cody. He gets the guy down, kicks his back, mounts him, and then just gets elbowed into a
fuck Herb Dean for that fight, man.
What's that?
Herb threatened to stand him up when he was in back mount on William Knight. He panicked.
No, it's just funny because the corners say, Cody, don't put your head there. Posture. And then he just gets elbowed into a blip. I'm like, no, Cody. Stop, Cody. No, it's just weird because Dolce isn't a guy who's going to go out there and, put a pace on it. He's just an athletic, physical specimen, judo background, but I think Brundage can honestly just grind him. It's kind of different from the Barrio scenario of how we looked at that fight when we both bet Barrio, is that Barrio is going to just push that consistent, boxing based game. But I think Brundage can do that from more of a wrestling and grappling based perspective where he can just push that and make it grindy. And I don't think Dolce's gas necessarily holds up under that. To your point, I just don't love what I've seen from Brundage at space, and I don't know if he's going to take exactly that path because despite his background, he will stand and strike for extended minutes, which I think would be stupid here. So, nonetheless, my pick is Brundage, but it's a pass for me.
Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to rehash anything you guys really said. I kind of think Dolce's slight favorite kind of makes sense because I think that KO power is live here, but again, not a strong take on my part.
You know what's funny about this fight is it's like, and I'm always the guy screaming if there's value, bet it. But it's like I can so clearly in my head picture Brundage dying here or like fucking around for a minute and getting put out that it's like I'm convinced it's going to happen, even though I'm also convinced he probably should be the favorite here. I'm never that guy to run from it, but it's like I don't know. I don't know if like I woke up from a dream that Cody Brundage got KO'd. I don't want that to happen on Saturday. I
just don't think the price is there. Like I want a better price. Yeah. I want a better price.
Yeah. Like Brundage plus 150. I'm happy to take the shot that he doesn't get KO'd.
Exactly.
There, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just to hash like what we were just talking about last week. I mean, Tim Elliott, perfect example, plus 205. I mean, if that's a closely lined fight, are we betting that? Maybe not, but.
Yeah,
plus 205, it's like a no-brainer. So it's kind of same thing here. Like for me, it's just like in those kind of flippy floppy type of spots. Like I'd rather pass if the value's not there.
Yeah, and it's also just like Brundage. Like yes, Maximov to Dolce is probably a huge step down, but also Brundage has this weird like flippy floppy career where he's fought a lot of shit, and then Nick Maximov. So it's like, what happens when you fight something in the middle? I don't really know. We're gonna find out. So. But moving on, we got a fun one here. Well, I mean, if Miranda Maverick's smart, it shouldn't be very fun, but it's Sabina Mazzo versus Miranda Maverick. Luke, what's your take here?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to start it. I mean, I don't know how you can go and tape both of these girls and say that the stand-up will not be competitive. Like it's going to. I'd be kind of shocked if it was just, a blowout from either girl, but the path on the ground is clearly for Miranda Maverick. She's at a size deficiency here. She is the better wrestler. She is the better grappler. And Mazzo will just play guard. You even go back to her fight with Moraes. I think Moraes kind of just let her up. Like she kicked her off a little bit, but if she wanted to get back on top of her, she could have. We saw the fight with Alexis Davis. Davis went 3 for 3 on takedowns and went, I think, for over 9 minutes of control in that fight where she just played guard. So to me, that's the path for Maverick. I understand the take on Mazzo because going in, I thought, maybe I'd take a pop on, homegirl Mazzo, even though I'm not a fan of Mazzo in any stretch of the imagination, because once again, you can make that argument, but it's like, if she's flattened and the girl's going to go out there and wrestle her to death, it just begs trap by the number spot on Mazzo for me. I think Maverick by points at evens is a good look.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this number, to be honest, is more than justified if she comes out here and just shoots takedowns nonstop. I mean, like you touched on, Luke, I think the striking is going to be competitive, but I mean, she should know the game plan here. I mean, it's no brainer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was on the phone with, or not on the phone, I was texting with Andrew Gambus last week, and he was like, yeah, Maverick's going to handle her, no problem. And then the line popped down. I saw plus 220 Mazzo, and I was like, yeah, you're wrong. I'm betting Mazzo big. And then I went and taped the fight, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I guess the lasting image of like Mazzo's grappling in my head was her just abusing Shannon Dobson on the ground. And so I had like remembered her being an okay defensive grappler. My God, is she the pits? Like, it is like embarrassingly bad how poor defensive grappler she is. Like if Maverick gets takedowns here, she's not getting up. Like I feel very confident saying that. Like a takedown's around. Which begs the question, why not bet Maverick at the big chalk? My issue is like I don't really trust Maverick to fight to an optimal game plan, if that makes sense. Like didn't think she fought the most optimal game plan against Macy Barber. Against Liana Jojua, she won that fight via cut stoppage, but it's like, look, I know she landed more strikes, but like it's not like Jojua wasn't landing at her a lot in that fight, Yeah, Luke's girl. And it's like she could have taken Jojua down at any point, and instead she decided to, proverbially measure cocks with her. And it did not really. I mean, it went well that fight, but like, what if she comes out here with Mazzo and decides to, exchange with her or test her striking? Like, I actually think in that kind of fight, Mazzo probably has a chance to win a volume-based decision. So
Mazzo is value if this is a 15-minute range kickboxing match. 100%.
Huge value if it is.
Yeah.
So it's like I think if Maverick takes the right approach, she should look minus 1,000. It should look like what the Blanchfield fight looked like to her, really.
Yeah.
But do I trust her to? Not really. Like if I did, I would lay it here. Honestly, I agree with you though, Luke, and I'm thinking about that too. I think Maverick decision at evens is pretty good. Like, I guess she could finish Mazzo, but Alexis Davis is a pretty credentialed black belt. If she didn't finish her on the mat, I'm not sure how much. Like, she fought hands pretty well there with Davis on her back. I'm not sure how confident I'd be in Maverick finishing her. So I don't think that's a bad look. But yeah, Maverick should make this a boring fight if she's intelligent. Now, for a more interesting fight, we have the Leech, David Jackson. He's taking on Consuelo Kirk, conqueror of Makwan Amirkhani. Luke, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I like Jackson here. I was early mover on it. I got Jackson, I think, at like plus 135 or so. Concern is based on what he said in some interviews, which I hope he doesn't do, to sit there and stand and box the guy, not because I think that Kirk is, some elite striker, but nonetheless, that is the path for Kirk in the fight. He is the better striker in the matchup, but Jackson's a savage when it comes to the wrestling and the grappling. He's very consistent to do it over a large sample size, which is why he needs to do it, and he should do it.
He's going to wrestle.
I think
he's going to wrestle. He's not crazy. Yeah.
I would hope so. I've seen crazier things though over the years, but nonetheless, he just has advantages on the ground. He has that grinding-based game. We saw that against Rosa. We've seen that in virtually every other one of his fights. The guy's got the nickname of the Leech for a reason. When he gets a hold of guys legitimately do not get away from him. His body locks are so strong. His clinch game is strong. He's solid on top. He's got a good game from those pressure passing positions. And I think a really interesting component of this fight is when Kirk fought Amirkhani. Amirkhani is a good wrestler, but Amirkhani also does not have 15 minutes of gas. And Amirkhani, barring a couple different sequences, Amirkhani actually, goes ahead and gets the job done there. So I think that's very interesting. I think Damon Jackson can absolutely cook this dude on the ground, but if he's going to sit there and strike, I don't like it. But once again, if the path is taken properly, he's going to cook Kirk on the ground because these guys going to play guard. I do think that Kirk is actually a good enough defensive grappler to not get submitted potentially. So I more see like a grinding Damon Jackson based decision, but plus 135 made no sense. I think Jackson, in my opinion, the line should have been flipped. I think Jackson's 65% in the matchup.
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually just taped this a few hours ago before we came on the pod, and I picked it up at minus 110, and I thought it even that I had a unit and a half on that, and I still think there's a ton of value there. I mean, you touched on it, Luke. I mean, we like on this podcast, we like backing those kind of guys that have that grindy wrestling pressure, that bring the pace and whatnot, because it's a money winning, minute winning style. So I think, to be honest with you, as long as he doesn't get knocked out early here, I mean, I think Jackson's going to take over hugely. And yeah, I also, there's another sneaky play on DraftKings. They have Damon Jackson in the over 1.5 rounds is plus 130. Not a bad spot either. Again, depending on, obviously, you got the early money lines, but.
Yeah, I mean, we have a mutual friend. I think you guys probably saw the message he sent us, where who also knows Damon Jackson personally. And Jackson, I believe, said something to him like, yes, there will definitely be wrestling, but he's a good grappler. There might be a lot of boxing. I believe that Jackson's going to come out here and wrestle him. Look, I don't think Jackson is quite as good a wrestler as Makwan is, in terms of his entries. Like, Makwan's entries are pretty slick and pretty quick. But Jackson, I think, is a lot stronger. He's got much better cardio than Makwan. And I know, to your point, Luke, he's very reliable to go after it. I know he's going to try to get him down. And I know once he gets him down, that's probably around, how
he's got a better top game though, John.
Oh,
we would agree on that though, right?
I think he would dunk on Makwan if they fought, to be honest, like badly if they fought, to be honest with you. Just my opinion, but like I'm pretty sure. That's what I'll say. I like the way Kirk got positioned against Makwan was elevating him and sweeping him. I'd be stunned if he sweeps Jackson. Like, legitimately, like, stunned if he sweeps Jackson multiple times in this fight. I guess, look, I'm not going to like rehash too much what you said, but Kirk's a fairly gassy guy. We've seen it in the past. He has a real shot to hurt Jackson in his face. Like, no question. He hits pretty hard. He's a pretty dynamic athlete, but I think Jackson's a much better grappler. I think a takedown's probably around here. Jackson's cardio is way better than Kirk's is. And, Kirk's also just had a tendency to do fuck all in fights, throughout his career. Like, I laid minus 300 against Kirk against Bruno Souza. And somehow he gave that fight away on the feet. I still, to this day, try to figure out why he decided that was a fight he wasn't going to grapple at all in. But, he has a history of making fairly questionable, choices in terms of fight IQ. He emptied the absolute clip trying to finish Billy Q in the first round of that fight and ended up getting finished gassed out in the next round. I trust Jackson's fight IQ a lot, in spite of what he may say during interviews. He's always displayed good fight IQ. He's a very good submission grappler. He's a very good wrestler. He's got a very good top game. Look, he can get put out here. No question about it. But when you're talking about one guy's a great round winner and one guy's a spotty round winner with a bad gas tank, it's like, I'm not saying Kirk's drawing dead on a decision, but I think it's going to be tough for him to win a decision here. I'm with you guys. I can't put Kirk past 40% here, personally. I got in on Jackson also early at like plus 130, but like minus 110, I still think is a decent line on him, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm on Jackson heavy here. I think it's leech season. I think he's going to suck the blood out of Kirk and probably finish him in the late second, early third round. So we roll with the leech. Hopefully it works out with us. The next fight of the evening is a fun one. We got Javid Basharat coming off of beating the absolute fuck out of Oran Kalan. Literally the worst bet of my life, betting Oran Kalan in that fight. I am not kidding. Literally might be the worst bet I've ever made in MMA in my entire life. And he's taking on Trevin Jones. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
Basharat seems like a decent prospect, I would say. Like, he seems like a fun guy, fun striking here and there, but like his level of competition just doesn't seem all there. And I don't know, like lining him minus 150 over Jones just seems a little crazy. But like at the same time on the Jones side, he's just kind of like hit or miss. Like, he doesn't really seem the consistency of a fighter, and like his volume obviously isn't that great either. So to me, it's just kind of a pass and like a learn on Basharat, really. Like, he seems decent, but he hits hard, but it's a pass.
Yeah, I took a small stab at Jones plus 135. I guess my view, like, I did not think very highly of Basharat, obviously, since I bet the Israeli 37-year-old who missed weight by 5 pounds and fought nothing but bums against him. So I didn't think very highly of him going into his Contender Series fight. And even coming out of it, he was dominant in that fight. But I think a lot of people are conflating dominance with, like, basically getting no resistance back at him. Like, Kalan basically didn't even fight in that fight. He didn't even show up, like, if you watch that fight. And so, I want to, like, liken it kind of to, like, what my view was of, the Munir Lizez or Zach Alazan fight and why I faded Lizez. And it was like, oh, Lizez put on a show and everybody liked him, but he put on a show against nothing back at you. Like, it's so important. A lot of guys at the professional level of MMA can look really good if they don't get any resistance. And Basharat, even in that fight and in every fight regionally, basically got none. And like when I look at him technically, I'm like, okay, he's a good athlete, he's fast, but that karate stance, like sure his speed makes up for it, but I'm not sure how much it makes up for it when you get to this level. And in terms of the grappling, he's got a bunch of subs, but he doesn't strike me as a guy with a heavy top game. He doesn't strike me as like he strikes me as more of like a slick submission grappler or like snatch your neck if you put it in the wrong place, not as a guy who, actually would come out here and like win jiu-jitsu competitions or anything. But, pace and pressure can win fights in MMA, and he's taking on Trevin Jones, who, in fairness, has issues of pace. But Trevin Jones, like, I think he's a solid fighter all around. He's technically pretty sound. He's a good boxer. He throws hard leg kicks. He's got a black belt. He can grapple. He will attempt takedowns. And the guy's a lot more tested. Let's be honest. He's been in there with Timur Valiev, Sadkov Kakramanov, and Mario Batista. That's like a pretty serious set of guys. And honestly, I actually think Batista is kind of a much better version of Basharat. Very similar kind of archetype. And if you look at that fight, Jones was probably winning minutes in the first round before he knocked him out. And so I can hear him like, could Basharat pace him? Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, he definitely could, but we've never seen Basharat deal with a guy who's a proactive leg kicker like Jones. We've never seen him deal with a boxer on Jones's level. We've never seen him deal with a grappler on Jones's level. So for me, with all of those questions being there, I don't see how you line this past the evens. I'm willing to take the shot at Jones. I'm very small on him here, but I kind of feel obligated. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, a bit on a different side for me, just because I still don't know what to make who Trevin Jones is as a fighter. Like, is as many questions as there is on Basharat, I still don't know what to make, on Trevin Jones. What I have seen from Basharat, I like. I think he managed his distance largely pretty well. Not a guy who's going to go out there and, land, 6 significant strikes per minute, but I think he's got sniper-like tendencies. He's long. He has those front headlock-based series. And then the Kakramanov fight was just weird, stuck against the cage, funny stuff. He front loads a bunch of KOs in his early fights where he's massive underdogs. And, it's like, I don't know I don't know what to make of this guy at this point. I mean, he's 13-7 and is a pro, killed a couple guys, over even in Japan, but even in some of those fights, he didn't look overtly great in too. The guy's just kind of a wild card for me, but from what I've seen from Basharat, I think he's actually probably one of the better guys out of this entire contender series from what I've seen overall. But we'll see. We'll see. I like Basharat to get it done, but yeah, wild card on Jones. Still don't know what to make of the guy.
Yeah, we'll see. Moving on, we have an interesting one. It's a female fight. We got JJ Aldrich. She's taking on Jillian Robertson. I have a small play here. I played the over at like -115. Honestly, I might even play fight goes the distance at +122 right now as well, I believe. I guess for me, and I'll leave the harder analysis to you guys. I think it plays on the fight, but like, it's a female fight. Like, a lot of the total here relies on like for the total to accurately be -118, in my opinion, you basically have to line Jillian like -250. Like, I think it's probably safe to say the finishing upside is largely in her favor here. She has a bunch of finishes. Obviously, she's very dangerous in top position and on the mat. And that's not the case. She's lined at -140, -150. And we look at Aldrich. The only person who's finished Aldrich is Macy Barber, who obviously is a tank who's finished a bunch of people in WMMA. And Aldrich's grappling, I think there are some questions about her defensive grappling, but not in terms of the soundness, like technically in terms of her submission grappling, more in terms of, how proficient is she at stuffing takedowns at this stage of her career. But I think it's probably strong enough that she can stay safe on bottom. I mean, I know Luke's going to touch on it, so I won't get too far into it, but it's not like Jillian's out grappling a bunch of studs here, is all I'll say. And on the other side of things, like, if she can sprawl and brawl, Aldrich is going to win the fight, but she doesn't have a single knockout in her career. She doesn't have a knockdown in the UFC. Even if it turns into Jillian pulling guard and Aldrich riding her out, I don't think Aldrich finishes her from top position. I don't think Jillian's very likely to finish from bottom position. Like, I kind of think it's crazy. I think they should be like minus 185, minus 200. Again, the one exception is if it just turns out Jillian can just maul her. But I don't really think so. Luke, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, I'm first team all JJ this week. I played her at plus 135. Line makes no sense to me. I think the line should have been flipped. We've seen the market kind of correct and get some buyback. And the big thing for me in digging back into it, obviously I value the wrestling and grappling of Jillian. I think she's got a strong top game. But if you actually go back and look at it, like who is Jillian just fucking on top? Emily Whitmire, Molly McCann, Veronica Macedo, Sarah Froda, Courtney Casey, brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but stuffs takedowns probably at the worst clip in the history of WMMA, right? Poliana Botelho actually stuffs takedowns at a good clip, but Botelho smokes cigarettes probably like a hairdresser on a Sunday morning, right? So there's not much to take away there. So my point is that I think people look at the JJ fight when she fought back, in her debut against, homegirl or whatever. She got taken down 5 times and people are like, okay, takedowns easy. Robertson controlled top position subber. But once again, JJ was like 21, 22 at that point. So to assume that she can't make any improvements from there is one thing. 2, if you actually go back and watch that fight, it's not as if she was just flattened for 5 minutes, that she was actually controlled there either. She was able to work up on a lot of those positions as well. We've seen her in some transitions, even against Viana, where Viana was actually able to get to her back. JJ was able to reverse position. My point being that the girls that Robertson is just taking down like with ease and running on the ground, it's not the same thing. JJ isn't going to just tip down from a takedown attempt. Like, she stuffs takedowns overall at a pretty good clip. She's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. She's a competent grappler. We've seen her also not only on bottom position,
is Jillian a black belt?
Position. What's that?
Yeah.
Is Jillian a black belt? She is?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Now she
yeah.
is. Yeah. I think she leveled up this last year. But my point is that Aldrich is not an incompetent defensive wrestler. She's not an incompetent defensive grappler. My thing is, in terms of making the play, is that I think there are bigger levels on the feet than there are on the ground here. Whereas if Jillian even lands a takedown, I don't think it's as simple as saying, oh, she's going to sit there and kill the girl like she did Cachoeira, or kill the girl like she did Veronica Macedo. I don't think it's that easy and it's that black and white. Whereas on the feet, Jillian was getting pieced for 3 minutes by Priscilla Cachoeira 4 months ago.
As a minus 280 favorite.
As a minus 280 favorite. I just want to say
she closed minus 400. Yeah.
It is one-way traffic on the feet for JJ Aldrich 100%. Whereas I don't think if Robertson gets takedowns, it's auto sub that JJ can't stand up. I don't think that at all. So I think there is just, from a line value-based perspective, there's much more upside to JJ Aldrich in being a competent defensive wrestler, a competent defensive grappler who has extremely more advantages on the feet than actually Robertson does on the ground. So the line doesn't make sense. The market's actually agreeing with me in that sentiment too. So I'm willing to lay it with Aldrich, but I 100% also understand the overs too. I think that's a great play because I don't think JJ necessarily finishes her. I think the overall finish equity probably comes from Jillian, if I'm wrong, and she just completely smokes her on the map. But I just don't get it based on the past girls that she's fought in comparison to JJ. I don't think it's a similar comparison.
Lags, how about you?
Yep, I have a small play as well on the over 2.5 rounds at minus 125. I mean, similar thoughts. I'm not going to completely rehash them, but I guess to me, like, obviously, Jillian's my girl or whatnot, but like Luke touched on in the Courtney Casey fight, that's the only fight that I've ever bet Jillian Robertson is that fight, because I thought the takedowns was just going to be so easy money, and it was minus 120. And Luke, we just touched on with the
should have been minus 500.
beside the point. Yeah, we were just talking about the last fight with Caceres. It was minus 400. And yeah, we thought the takedowns were going to be easy money, but it was like those first 3 minutes were sweaty as hell, to be honest with you. So I just think that even if Jillian's not able to land takedowns here, I think she's probably going to try to pull guard here to try to get the fight to the ground. And even in that situation, JJ on top can stay safe on top. She's not going to get guard sub. I don't really see how the over isn't, like you said, minus 185, minus 200. I think that the Jillian, the finishing upside is largely in Jillian's favor here.
I should also add friend of the podcast, Jillian Robertson. So there's no malice in Luke's bet against her. But
yes.
Friend of the podcast, Jillian Robertson.
Jillian, don't watch this. Don't watch
You fuck Luke. Moving on. We got a great one here. We got Bruno Blindado Silva. He's taking on the man they call Stonehands, Alex Pereira, who has a whole 5 fights in professional MMA. Legs, take it away.
So I haven't made a play here, and I don't think I'm going to, but I was initially looking at the under 1.5, to be honest, at minus 160. I think that's probably the best play here because I don't largely, even though that, we see on Bruno Silva's Instagram, he's been working that wrestling, working the chain wrestling. I don't think it's very good. I think it's really sloppy. I think he leaves himself super open in exchanges. I think he's going to catch a check left hook really earlier and get slept. So yeah, to me, I think the under 1.5 is probably the best juice spot on the play.
Well, I've lost literally thousands of dollars fading Bruno Silva in the UFC so far. This week we're backing him, though. We're going to get behind Bruno Silva here because guess what? As big of a fucking fraud as I think Bruno Silva is, I think Alex Pereira is a bigger fucking fraud. Look, I'm not going to make an impassioned case as to why, he's a bad kickboxer. He's obviously one of the best kickboxers to ever do it. Like, no question about it. If you want to go back and watch my breakdown as to why I lost money on Andreas Michailidis against him, before the MSG card, you're more than welcome to. But basically, look, the reality is how many guys have come over from Glory, even good Glory strikers, and actually turned out to be elite strikers at this level? Not many. Israel is obviously, the big example that we have of that. And obviously it's a great example since he's a champion.
Yeah.
But he's the exception, not the rule. And they had been planning Israel's transition to MMA for like almost a decade before he made it. He took his time fighting. I think he had 11 or 12 fights before he made the jump to the UFC. Like he did not make the jump quick at all. Bruno, with Alex Pereira, look, he's a great striker. He's dangerous. He's fucking huge for 185 pounds. But like we still have such limited data on, him in MMA. And it's like, what we do have, we have the pre-UFC fights where it didn't look good, to be honest with you. He had a couple KOs, but he also lost. He got subbed one time. We've seen him gas out. You saw that, he has relied largely defensively on, kind of using kickboxing defense and not a lot of head movement, and it hasn't really worked for him. Look, the Andreas Michailidis fight, I don't even know what you take from that. He lost the first round unanimously. He basically got held against the fence for 5 minutes and then just landed a flying knee right off the bat. And Michailidis was done to shit too. So I'm not making a case that without it he would have won. He would not have. But I'm just saying. But what I did see from that fight is a lot of the tendencies that bothered me and led me to bet Michailidis were still there. In particular, look, his takedown defense is not very technical. Even his get-ups aren't super technical. And he doesn't really – Bruno or Alex Pereira, if you watch him in kickboxing even, he's not really your stick and move kind of guy. He's kind of your go forward and let his fucking hands go. And throughout his MMA tape leading up to that debut, it was pretty much if guys pressured him, it was back straight up. He did that pretty much right away against Michailidis. Both times he had takedowns. Michailidis went forward. He backed right up to the cage. Am I making a case that Bruno Silva is going to take him down here? I hope so. I really, really hope he tries to take him down. I actually don't think Bruno is bad on top. He's got a black belt too. Do I expect him to? Not really. Not really. I really, really wish I did expect him to. Because I'd have a lot more money on him if I did. I don't think he's going to do that, though. I think what's probably going to happen is he'll pressure Pereira and either get put out or put Pereira out. Where I kind of depart from, I think the consensus is the idea that, Pereira has this massive, massive edge there. Yes, of course, over a 15-minute fight, I'd expect Pereira to land more strikes and be the better striker there. In kickboxing, he'd be a huge favorite. But as I touched on, he's not really This isn't kickboxing, and his defense I don't think is great for MMA. And it's like if they get against the fence, first of all, if they swing in general, Pereira doesn't move his head much, and so it's like, well, he's probably the bigger hitter. Can you really say that that's more than 50-50 if they just sit there and swing in the pocket? Like Silva's a big hitter, and he's pretty fast. And so I kind of think from that angle, it's at worst 50-50. Maybe, Bruno obviously has the wrestling upside here, right? If anybody's got grappling upside, it's Bruno. And it's probably fairly significant given his jiu-jitsu background if he goes for it. And then beyond that, it's like over 15 minutes, I've seen Bruno Silva come back from being dumpstered by a good wrestler for 10 minutes and still have cardio left in the tank in round 3. Whereas I've seen Alex Pereira gas the fuck out, in MMA, when he's been forced to get extended here. And so it's like, I think Pereira just nuking Bruno is live. Look, I bet Jordan Wright against Bruno Silva. I don't think very highly of him. But I do think there is upside for Bruno here in a number of areas. I think he can KO him. Obviously, he can also get KO'd. I think he has the upside of grappling him. And I do think if the fight gets extended, Bruno's probably, like, if it's in round 3 and it's a fairly high volume fight, I would much rather have my money behind Bruno than I would Alex Pereira, Look, my view on Alex Pereira is the guy has 5 MMA fights. He hasn't shown good cardio. He hasn't shown good head movement. Until I actually see him put together an actual 15-minute sample of looking decent in the octagon, I'm going to fade it. That's just really, as long as he's getting juiced up, that's basically what I'm going to do. It may burn me, but I'm okay with that. I know long-term doing this, it's going to be right. So we'll see what happens here. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say, I'm kind of with you at the same time, because I've been like a mark for glory kickboxing over the years. I've just watched it for so long, and I'm like, I fucking love this guy. He comes to the UFC, and I want to just dumpster my money into him. Obviously, you touched on it. Guy's just a savage, but for me, you cannot ignore the grappling upside, which sounds stupid based on the fact that the guy struggled historically in the grappling despite being a black belt. But it's like Andres Michailidis just took a round off the guy not that long ago. Not trying to shit on you, John. Michailidis sucks. Sucks.
Yes, he does.
He's not good. And he just took a round off the guy. And Silva, in my opinion, much better athlete, much bigger guy, black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. Like, I think he has the potential to do that here. So it's like a Pereira KO, obviously, what we have seen from largely these glory kickboxer types of archetypes, you have to be, range, point fighting, outside base strikers, time your shots or whatever. But if you're going to have a guy that's going to get after you, once again, legs brought it up, check hook. I think Silva very well gets put down if he just kind of jumps in, does that. But I think from a wrestling perspective, he's got a path. There's just so much that we don't know about the guy from that perspective. And Bruno Silva's got 28 pro fights, and he's been fighting over in Russia too. So it's not like he's, despite being Brazilian, fighting over on these cupcake Brazilian regional. The guy's been fighting over in Russia. He's fought some good guys over there to boot, and weathered some storms, as John's touched on. So it's like Silva's the side for me personally. I think like even minus 600 like doesn't go the distance. I think that could be like a little weird personally. Yeah. I wouldn't put that in your parlays necessarily. I do think the fight finishes, but even the under 1.5 I think is getting up to about minus
160
200 or so.
Oh really?
Is it really minus 600 doesn't go?
Minus 600 doesn't go, but the fight doesn't go. I think it's getting close to minus 200. It's like, okay, so let's say Bruno dies on legs early, similar to the Michailidis fight. It's like, do you feel good about your under 1.5 at minus 200? It's like, not really. So to me, the play on the fight is Silva. You're playing into the variance. You're playing with a lot of bullshit, but it's like, guy's got a path.
I'll be betting Silva. Yeah.
He has a path.
100%. We're going to ship it.
So real quick to end that. So on Best Fight Odds, so FanDuel's got the fight goes the distance is plus 450, and then they have the fight starts round 2 is minus 112.
Minus 112. I wouldn't play that. Fuck that.
Yeah,
it is. It's also like it's so weird too because we haven't really even seen like Pereira against Michailidis didn't really have to do a whole lot. Michailidis wasn't really threatening. He was kind of able to just stay safe. Whereas I feel like Silva can actually make him have to work if he gets taken down, So we don't even know what Pereira's cardio is really like. I don't know. It's a weird fight, but we're going to roll
more
the dice.
dangerous than Michailidis, though.
Oh, yeah. Dude, Michailidis didn't finish. What's his name? Bueller? KB Bueller?
Yeah, KB.
He didn't get close to finishing KB Bueller. Like, I think that speaks volumes. Tom Breeze finished KB Bueller. Which also speaks volumes. Poor Tom Breeze. Rip. Anyway, moving on. We got a fun one here. We got Drew Dober. We got Terrence McKinney. McKinney coming back from, 2 weeks ago? Was it that he saw the French fraud?
Let me look at that. It's for SC. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think it was the Makachev green card.
Really,
right?
kind of sticks in my craw really sticks in my craw that I didn't fade like Zion. First of all, I bet Zion the first time it was booked, even though I bet Jamie Malarkey against him. And then again, I let it slip out of my hands the second time. Didn't bet it last time, but look, Terrence McKinney, what can you say about him? He's a good athlete. He's a good wrestler. Seems to have an okay submission grappling game. I'm still not really ready to say it's a good submission grappling game, to be honest. Like, it just seemed like Ziam just had no clue, once a decent grappler got on top of him, to be honest. So I don't really know how much stock to put in the submission. And obviously the guy's an explosive striker. He's got a bunch of finishes. Look, he's taking a fucking huge step up in competition here. Drew Dober on short notice. Drew Dober is serious. But, with that said, look, Dober, I feel confident in saying he's a better striker. Like, I'm very confident in saying that in this fight. He's probably, too, to be honest, the harder hitter when you actually look at, I know McKinney has all these first-round finishes, but outside of the Frivola one, there are a lot of weird head kicks and stuff. I'd be surprised if he's landing that kind of shit on Dober. I feel pretty confident saying Dober's a better boxer. But what I'll say is, theoretically, the stylistics here should be favorable to Terrence McKinney. I don't think Dober's a good defensive grappler at all, personally. The numbers support it. The tape supports it. Bottom line is, half gassed out Alex Hernandez was taking him down. McKinney, if he really wants him, he's a good wrestler. Whatever else you want to say about the guy, he is a good wrestler. If he wants takedowns here, he's going to get him. My issue with Terrence McKinney is, even in I told you guys right after the Zion fight, it's like we still don't know what his cardio is like, really, when he gets into an extended fight. The only sample is the Woodson fight. It's just, they're even on top of Zion. Every action McKinney goes to is explosive. Every single one. It's all so power-based, and it's like maybe he can maintain that over 15 minutes, in which case, we're probably talking about a guy that's a future, serious contender if he can maintain it. But more likely, you don't see many guys who use the kind of burst and the kind of explosive movements that McKinney does and see them, maintain a decent gas tank. And that's kind of where I am here, where it's like, I think McKinney is pretty live to, maybe torch Dober in the first round. Like, if you told me McKinney takes him down, cuts through him on the mat, and eventually subs him, I wouldn't be shocked. But also, at the same time, McKinney didn't sub Sean Woodson in 7 minutes, So it's like, do I think Woodson's a better defensive submission grappler than Dober? Not really. So I'd be a little surprised. I kind of think the most likely scenario here is Dober survives and Dober, I shouldn't even say survives, probably has some issues early, gets taken down a bit. But I think eventually there's going to be a pretty swift turning point where Dober takes over this fight and just beats the absolute shit out of McKinney. Have I bet the fight yet? No. I'm pretty interested in live betting Dober after the first, just because I think unless McKinney does prove to be a cardio beast, I think so much of his win condition is front-loaded here. But also, we're starting to reach the point with this line where it's like, minus 165. If it comes in past minus 150 to minus 150, minus 125, I honestly might bet him dude, Dober's been fighting nothing but killers, and now he's fighting Terrence McKinney. It's like I'm kind of willing to pay up to see what is Terrence McKinney? What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, it's weird for me. To me, I'm more so on the McKinney side, just in the sense that Dober is going to give him opportunities to knock out. I watched a ton of Dober footage back, despite him being, established in the UFC. He's a guy that will just sit down on his shots and he will just sling bombs at the same time. So it's like, I think that, is going to give McKinney the opportunities. It's not like Dober necessarily plays, despite his Muay Thai base, a guy who's going to sit there and this methodical, outside kickboxing. That's just not really his style. So I think that gives opportunities for McKinney to knock out 100%. And then you touched on the fact with the ground, that's where his struggles have come. He's been submitted 5 times in the UFC. Granted, am I willing to put Terrence McKinney on the pedestal of a Beneil Dariush or an Islam Makhachev? Absolutely not. I'm absolutely not. But nonetheless, he's still being taken down. You touched on the Hernandez fight. Like, he's still even hurt and just getting hit with reactionary based takedowns. It's like, I actually do think that McKinney's wrestling and grappling is better than a lot of people give him credit for personally. So I do think he has a path on the ground in the fight. But once again, going back to your point, we don't know how he looks in overt extended striking affairs. So if he's not able to kill Drew Dober, however that sequence plays out, I have to favor Drew Dober at a good amount in that fight, right? If he's not able to ground Drew Dober, if he's not able to submit Drew Dober, got to favor Drew Dober in that fight. It's just weird. It's a weird dynamic. I understand the money coming in. I mean, people who played McKinney at like plus 200, I think that's honestly a very good play. But honestly, even the better play for me is the fight doesn't go at minus 200. I think based on the dynamic of how both guys fight, I don't really see how this fight doesn't finish unless it turns out to be a trap and of a 3-round war. But with McKinney, once again, you have your unknowns there. But based on the style dynamic, I don't see how this fight doesn't finish.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, I have a huge play on violence here, to be honest with you. I have 2 units on the fight doesn't start round 3. I'll echo your guys' sentiments of the same kind of thing with the first round. I think McKinney can get takedowns here early, but if he doesn't sub in the first round, I think honestly, if Dober's able to get up in the first round, obviously like second round, but if it's in the first round, I think you could put him out with one clean left hook. Like, I think as soon as he touches McKinney's chin, honestly, I think you could put him out. I think McKinney's pretty frail on the feet, and Dober hits hard as shit, to be honest with you, man. So I love the fight doesn't start round 3 here, minus 165.
Yeah, fair. Honestly, like, I don't think that's bad. Like, Dober, I mean, even the Riddell fight, right? Like, he hurt Riddell multiple times. He got hurt in that fight. Like, Dober's the kind of guy that's going to force a finish out of you.
Right. And to me, like, if he is hurting McKinney at all, I think he puts him out like on that punch type of thing. Like, I don't think this is like him staying around in the fight type of thing. And like we touched on with McKinney, I think he can get that early sub, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I largely
Dober's just a huge fucking step up, man.
We have to backtrack for a second because I realized that we missed a fight. We missed Matt Semelsberger and AJ Fletcher. Yeah. And I know you have a play, which is why we're backtracking. So I'll let you take it away here.
So I moved in a little late here. I know the line's moving in quite a bit, but I mean, I have a small play here, 1 unit plus 180 on AJ Fletcher. Listen, I think that just the dynamic itself, that he's a heavy-handed aggro wrestler that's going to bring it to Semelsberger, and that's stylistically what we've seen Semelsberger have issues with. Like, I just think that obviously, like, he could KO Fletcher. His defensive tendencies aren't great. He gets hit a ton, but I don't think Semelsberger's are great either, to be honest with you. Like, I think, to me, on the feet, it's fairly coin flippy. Power's about the same, defense is about the same, and then you got the guy at plus 180 who's largely going to shoot takedown. It is reliable to shoot takedowns. Obviously, the gas is concerned. Most of his finisher in the first round, but to me, I just think that on top he can stay safe. It's not going to be a ton of work. I think it could largely be around if he stays on top, to be honest with you. I think he's got great finishing ability on the mat.
Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion of this fight, to be honest, because I mean, look, I bet Jason Witt against Matt Semelsberger because of the grappling angle, but I also like trusted. I felt like Jason Witt's grappling had a lot more data than Fletcher's did, and I trusted Witt's top game a bit more than I trust Fletcher's. Obviously he threw a naked leg kick 7 seconds into the fight, got put out cold on the first punch of the fight, so we never really got to find out. I don't. The thing is, I don't really know. Semelsberger's regional grappling tape is pretty poor, to be honest. It is pretty poor. But it was a while ago, and like I don't really know. I know he's been at a BJJ gym. I don't know if he's made improvements or not, to be honest. With that dynamic in mind, like I feel nervous getting involved, especially because on the Fletcher side of things, like Fletcher is violent on top. I don't know how much I trust Fletcher's wrestling, though, to be honest. Like a lot of the takedowns he's getting are single shots, gets in, hits the takedown reactively immediately, which is great, and his timing on them is obviously quite good. I just don't know what happens if a single shot gets stuck. Can he chain wrestle? I don't really know. So my opinion on his wrestling is kind of, I mean, it could be good, but he doesn't come from a wrestling background. A lot of these takedowns are coming against guys who aren't the best guys out there. And then in addition to that, like on top, again, I think guys with technical get-up should be able to get up against him without too much difficulty. The thing is, in the Semelsberger's case, we haven't seen him use a technical get-up yet in his career. So does he have it in the back pocket? I don't really know. I just don't really I don't think Fletcher does the best job of shutting down underhooks, which is always, a big bugaboo of mine. Like you look at the guys in, the UFC who generally struggle with top control, and they're guys who don't shut down underhooks. I just don't know whether or not Semelsberger's made those adjustments. My view on the fight is kind of like the winner is going to look pretty dominant. Like if it turns out Semelsberger hasn't really made improvements, he's going to get fucking blanketed and probably just destroyed. If he has, I do think I think he's pretty durable, and I think he's a much better striker, to be honest, in general. I think he probably carves Fletcher apart on the feet. It's just, there's questions about on both sides, in my opinion, and it's something that I don't really feel really comfortable with a read on. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of right with you too, but if I was to do it, I'd be taking the shot on Fletcher personally, just based on that regional tape that we talked about. Guy has struggled on bottom. Fletcher has shot takedowns in the past. I think he's shown some good things on top, but he's just fought and beaten a bunch of cans, to be honest, which is why I actually came, I think, pretty close to betting the dude he fought on Contender Series. I actually might have done it, and then don't quote me on that. I may have done that, but it didn't go well. My point is we still don't have a ton of data out there on him. So I think if you're playing Fletcher, you're kind of playing more into the variance, which is fine though, because I mean, you are playing a big plus number at the end of the day, and a guy who does, in my opinion, have wrestling and grappling upside in the fight. It's just, if you are playing him, once again, lags, hope it hits for you. But you are playing into some of the unknowns. You're playing into some of that variance, but you're getting a decent plus number. And we have seen the market move, that way. I think he was like plus 220 or so, and now we're seeing him move down to plus 180. So people are coming in. So yeah, I'd be more inclined to back Fletcher. There's just a lot of unknowns there for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, don't disagree. And moving on, we got Khalil Roundtree. He's taking on Carl Roberson. I bet Roberson a plus 104 here. I think what is he, minus 120 right now?
Minus 125.
Minus 125.
I think he actually might be a little bit higher now. I bet him at minus 125, sorry, but I think he's sitting at minus 140 now.
He's back at 125 now. Yeah, okay. So you could probably justify a play there, I think. I guess for me, it's just like, I don't really rate Khalil a whole lot. I know he had that vicious finish against Bukauskas and looked pretty good pre-finish in that fight, but Modestas Bukauskas not really a UFC level striker. The dude basically loses minutes anytime anybody puts a pace on him. Granted, Carl Roberson not exactly known for an elite pace, but beyond that, I actually don't think Khalil is that technical, to be completely honest with you. He throws a lot of wild stuff and leaves a lot of openings. Most of the times when guys don't just stand in front of him like Bukauskas did and let him get that off, he kind of looks flummoxed and doesn't really know what to do. Beyond that, Khalil slows down at 7 minutes every single fight. That both goes for fights where he puts out a big output early, and there's also fights where he doesn't put out much of an output where he slows down. And then I guess to top it all off, it's like he's look, he'll try to explode up, but he's not the best grappler ever. He's certainly a poor submission grappler. And on the other side, we have Roberson, who it's like, yes, I think there are output concerns with Roberson. That's why I don't make Roberson like minus 200 here, because he does not throw enough strikes. But he's a very technical kickboxer. What we have seen on the feet has been pretty good. Like he shut down volume pretty well in that Kopylov fight, but has pretty good shot selection. And I'm not really sure I would rate Roundtree out as a better kickboxer than Kopylov, if I'm being honest. So like I trust Roberson on the feet. I know his cardio is solid. So like I kind of trust even if he struggles with Roundtree's output early. And again, like Khalil Roundtree, not exactly a high output striker either. I think he should be fine. I think he's the more technical of the two. And if it stays standing for 15, I think I'd favor Roberson slightly. But then you factor in the grappling, and it's like I don't think Roberson's the best grappler ever. Obviously, he's been submitted a handful of times, but he's mostly been submitted by really good grapplers. And if you look at his career, he's the kind of guy that against somebody who has a really strong top game or submission grappling game, he's going to struggle and he's going to make mistakes that are going to cost him. But he's also very opportunistic himself. And when he takes on inferior grapplers, he's going to wipe them. I mean, look, he subbed Darren Stewart, who's not a terrible grappler. He subbed Kopylov. I kind of think he's obviously the better athlete here. And I do think if he wants, he can get takedowns if he pursues it. And so it's like I favor him on the feet. I favor his cardio. And I think he's got a pretty significant grappling edge. And it's hard for me to place him below minus 150. I think 65% for Roberson is pretty fair here. So I have a small bet on him. Luke, what are your thoughts?
And yeah, piggybacking off your point too. I mean, he swept Turman. I mean, he got into dominant position on Turman, who is
grappled him.
Say what you want about Turman, but he did get into mount on Turman in that fight too. I'm kind of right there with you. I think the line should have been flipped. I played Roberson at plus money as well. Once again, not to rehash everything you said, I have some concerns in terms of the general volume, but the thing with Khalil is like, one, you don't know what you're getting from the guy. The guy looks like a world beater one day. He looks like shit, the next day. But I do actually think that Roberson's one of the best strikers that he's fought to date. And the thing with Khalil is in regards to actually in comparison to Roberson, where he's struggling on the ground, fighting, he's got submitted by 3 black belts and I think 1 brown belt. Khalil hasn't landed 1 takedown in 11 UFC fights. So you might want to throw that out the window. If Khalil does, great. Well, that's just MMA gods doing awesome things to us right now. And Khalil goes out there and submits Carl Roberson. That would be a whole lot of fun. But in the aggregate, you can't really anticipate that. I think Roberson's just much more sound on the feet. He's much more proven, in my opinion. I think he has a grappling upside in the fight. And I think that's something we were kind of, touching on in our group chat. Like, despite the guy struggling on the ground, that's also where Khalil has struggled as well. Like, I think that is actually a path for him in this fight, should he choose to take it. And him going up to 205 pounds, I think is actually a big component of this fight too, which is not being talked about enough. The guy struggled to make 185. He's not an undersized 205 at all. So he's not killing himself to cut to 185 now. He can just go free flow. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my camp from a narrative perspective. I think that's good for Roberson. I like him in the spot. I think he's 65%.
Max, how about you?
Yeah, Luke, I'm glad you mentioned that at the end there, because I was actually going to touch about it, that this fight is at 205 pounds, and I actually think that's pretty good for Roberson here. I mean, I'm not going to rehash a ton of things here. I think on the feet, obviously, over the stretch of 15 minutes, I favor the output of Roberson. I favor the cardio of Roberson. I favor the grappling of Roberson. Like, yes, touched on. He's been working with Corey Anderson, working that grappling in. To me, it's just like a pick 'em. I feel like you would have to say that like Khalil knocks him out in the first round, really, to say that there's value, because I just don't see that over 15 minutes. His work rate is pretty dog shit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I have a small play, 1 unit, minus 125 on the money line.
Bro, Bangkok Khalil, we're greatest one fight performer ever. I could fucking kill Eric Anders for that fight, man. I bet him pretty big there, to be honest. Dude, the guy's like massive grappling edge, and he just decides, I'm just going to go stand in kicking range and never really commit anything and just die here.
4 knockdowns.
Dude, Unreal.
That was a fucking unreal fight.
That was unreal. I think Anders landed 12 strikes across 3 rounds, literally.
Yeah, I think it was 79-12.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Fun stuff.
Putting 4 units on a -200 who gets outlanded 79-12. Maybe Oran Kalon was not my worst bet ever. I don't know. Moving on though, we got Alex Bruce Leroy enter the Dragon Caceres. He's taking on Sadiq Yusuff. Luke, what do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, no strong opinions here. I think Caceres, you can definitely make the case that he's live, defends distance strikes at a solid clip. He's going to throw a decent amount. Still think his strength of comp overall hasn't been great. Definitely gave him some significant consideration in his last fight against Choi. What we saw, what those big power shots did. I kind of think that's what the same song and dance here is for Sadiq. I think the bigger shots come from Sadiq. I think Sadiq actually probably knocks him out, to be honest. So I think bets on Caceres are trapped by the numbers, but stylistically, you can make a value-based case for Caceres. So it's kind of a weird fight for me, but I kind of think Sadiq puts him out personally.
Well, exactly. You.
Yeah, coming into this, I was thinking the foot movement, the lateral work of Caceres was going to trouble Yusuff a little bit, but I just think the forward pressure and the harder shots of Yusuff are just going to end up doing Caceres in, and probably, like Luke said, I think he's going to end up getting him knocked out, to be honest with you. I just don't like the defensive tendencies. After watching that Choi fight, he was getting hit clean anytime Choi was going forward. So, yeah, pass.
Yeah, I'm going to be betting Caceres here, to be honest. Small, though. I'll tell you what.
I respect it, John.
I bet him against Choi, and I'll tell you that fight is the reason I'm not going big on him here, and I'm only going to be taking like a small poke at it, because I do think, from a stylistic perspective, I think Caceres can do a lot of what Benitez was doing to have success against Yusuff in this fight. His footwork's pretty good. He tends to throw straight shots to Yusuff's hooks, and so I think there's going to be opportunities for him to land and score points here. Like minute to minute and second to second, I think Caceres is likely going to be pretty competitive. On top of which, it's like arguably Yusuff's best weapon is his outside low kick, which is probably going to be pretty neutralized against a southpaw Caceres. Like obviously you can still land the kick, but I think we all know it's not as impactful inside as it is on the calf. And so, yeah, like I think Caceres has, upside in this fight. And I think it's going to be pretty competitive. But to like both of your points, look, the bottom line is we saw, him struggle with the power of Choi a bit. And I think he's going to have similar issues here with Yusuff, most likely. But with that said, like, I'm not saying I don't rate Yusuff, because I have bet him a few times. He is like, Vikendra just mentioned it, but like, he is chinny. The guy gets hurt a lot. He's been put out.
He's been hurt almost every fight.
Yeah, but like
Allen twice.
We'll get into it next week, but it's like, how much better is Arnold Allen than Alex Caceres? I'm not even really sure he's at all better than him, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know if that's a shake like you're crazy, John, or if that's a.
No,
I think it's a
shake like you're crazy, John.
Crazy, John. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking that too. Yeah.
I'll tell you this: I'm going big on Hooker next week. That's all I'll say. We'll say the rest of that for next week. But like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of scope here for Caceres to have success in a lot of this fight for as long as it lasts. But I also like, kind of similar to what we talked about earlier on in the show with the Brundage and Lujambula fight, is Caceres fights with his hands down, and I do think Yusuff's going to have success and land heavy at points in this fight. Has a real opportunity to knock him out here, has a real opportunity to hurt him here. And if he doesn't, he's probably got a slight edge on minutes just from the power optics. But even with that being the case, it's just like a high volume fight where Caceres throws more volume, probably has better cardio, is more durable too, just generally, than his opponent is. And stylistically, in terms of like how the striking matches up, probably can land a lot. It's hard for me to not take a poke at plus 200, to be honest. And so I'll be taking a poke at him. It's probably going to be like a half unit, like nothing serious. I just, a high volume striker who throws down the pipe, I kind of have to bet against Yusuff, to be honest, at this point, until he shows me a little bit more. So I'm going to poke Caceres. I don't feel like great about it. Definitely don't put your mortgage on it, but I think it's worth a small poke. Moving on, though, we got Magic Marlon Moraes. Well, he's trying to save his career here. He's trying to keep his job. He's taking on the Chinese sensation, who might be 23, who might also be 35. We don't really know. Song Yadong. Lags, what are your thoughts?
We got Bangkok Marlon coming back. I think what makes this fight super interesting. Oh, you guys hear me? We good?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I cut out real quick there. Yeah, I think what makes this fight really interesting is that Song is lined the same over Marlon as Merab was lined over Marlon, and I wasn't really trying to lay that with Merab at minus 240, even though I know he had elite durability, pace, able to put it on him for 15 minutes. So, like, to me, Song doesn't have that in wrestling. He has decent wrestling, but obviously nowhere near like Merab level wrestling, and he doesn't really put on a pace in the striking. So, like, to cover minus 240, I just think I would rather just play the Song KO at like even money. Not that I'm interested in doing that, but if you're on the Song side, I think I would rather play the KO line. But I'm playing the fight doesn't start round 3, unit and a half on that at minus 134. Yeah, I think Marlon's chin is dust, to be honest with you. I think that anytime Song's probably able to touch clean here, I think he's going to be able to put him out. And Marlon is live, like we saw in that last fight, 5 minutes, 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be playing Marlon here, to be honest. I might take a shot at the KO, but I'm going to be doing it. I did lay the minus 240 with Merab against Marlon because I did feel pretty certain that he wasn't getting finished early at a very high clip. And it almost happened, as we all remember. But, sure enough, his pace took over. The thing for me is, like, actually contextualize, like, Marlon's last 3 fights. It's like he gets put out by – he didn't really gas against Sandhagen. He fractured his orbital and then got hit with a spinning wheel kick by him. The Fog fight, he came out way too aggressive, looking for takedowns, shot his load, got put out. It looked pretty ugly. Obviously, the Merab fight, it was a lot like that Leonardo Santos Clay Guida fight, to be honest, where he almost took his head off and then just emptied the tank trying to finish him and had nothing left, really. But if you actually go back one fight before this 3-fight losing streak, he took a decision off Jose Aldo Jr. Believe it or not, that happened.
Debatable.
I think I bet Aldo. I know.
He lost that fight.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it was a close fight, and so it's like, am I saying he's still that guy? No, not really. But I do think context is important, and it's like Song would be a decent sized dog to all of his last 4 opponents, right? And yet he's chalked up at like minus 275 here. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Look, if Song was like a much more busy fighter who forced the pace, I would be not very interested in playing Marlon. The thing for me is like Song is the kind of guy who like kind of fights to his opponent's pace. If you look at his career, Vera took a heavy pace to him. Song matched it and came back at him. You look at his last 2 fights, though, the Kyler Phillips fight. Phillips kind of played the outside game for 2 rounds, and Song was kind of happy to oblige the outside kickboxing game. The last fight with Casey Kenny, they didn't really engage heavy in the pocket at all. And in fact, we kind of saw a different version of Song there that was pretty content to play on the outside. And so, yeah, I have massive concerns about Marlon's cardio. No question about that. I have concerns about his durability. But, like, if Song is going to do what he traditionally does and fight to his opponent's pace, and he's going to give Marlon, like, a low-volume outside kickboxing match, like, I have to favor Marlon technically in that fight, His striking is so much more diverse. He's a hard kicker. Do I favor him to win this fight? No, just because, look, his durability and cardio are such huge liabilities that I think it's very, very hard to favor him. But I can't price him past, like, plus 150, really. Like, maybe Song comes out with a heavy grappling pace or a heavily aggressive pace, but if he sits out there and Marlon's able to get off on his kicks and kind of fight the fight that he had against Rafael Assunção and John Dotson and Jose Aldo, I don't really see why he can't win this fight at a decent clip, to be honest. Again, I don't favor him, but I think Song is kind of, if Marlon's going to beat any high-level fighters left at this point, I kind of think Song is the guy that's kind of tailor-made for him in that respect. So I'm going to take a small poke at Marlon. Again, like, I'm not going big, but I kind of feel like I have to play him here. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I strongly disagree. I think Song gets the fuck after the guy, to be honest, and I think he puts the dude out. to be honest. I don't think that Marlon can keep that kind of pace that song brings. Even that type of outside pace that you even give more tempered ranges, I guess, to Song, that doesn't favor Marlon, in my opinion, at least later, maybe early, but not early on. I think Song gets after him, and I think Song puts him out, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like most of the chat agrees with you as well here.
I think what's an interesting point too is like Song's durability seems to just be fucking like unreal.
It does. But
Marlon hits hard as shit too.
That head kick from Phillips, fucking iron.
Dude, Song's a G. I love Song. Honestly,
Hashtag give me the dong.
Yeah.
That gives hilarious.
I'm just like, is Marlon just going to go out to everybody these days? Maybe that's the case, but
he just doesn't do anything though.
Dude, but like, what happens if Song eats 4 leg kicks and suddenly they're staring at each other for like the next 12 minutes?
I don't think that happens. So I could be wrong. I don't think that happens. That's the disagreement. I don't think that.
Well, we're gonna see. We're gonna find out. I'm excited for it. It should be. Well, actually, the way I'm drawing it up, it'll be very boring. If it goes the way that you're drawing it up, it should be very exciting. I'm hoping for a boring.
I hope you cash. I mean, I don't have a bet on the fight, so I hope.
Oh, yeah. So fuck you then, Luke.
All right. We need a violence. We need a violence spot then.
Let's go, Marlon.
Moving on. We got Thiago Santos. He's somehow getting another main event after failing to cash that doesn't start round 4 against Johnny Walker for
Thanks, might have a brain aneurysm.
Oh man,
this fucking guy. Taking up Magomed Ankalaev. Many people are saying Magomed Ankalaev might be the next champion in this division. Honestly, I faded Ankalaev with Volkan Oezdemir. Like, Santos kind of sets up right on a tee for like the guy to fade Ankalaev with here. But if you guys remember, I put out a tweet a couple days ago. Great Twitter engagement strategy, by the way. Engagement farming, as the kids are calling it these days.
100%.
Saying if you wager one house on Thiago Santos will have no houses on Sunday morning. But while it was engagement farming, I was not kidding. Look, I think can Santos win the fight? Yeah, look, I've always had kind of some issues with Ankalaev's output. I think at some point he's going to lose a decision he shouldn't lose because he just doesn't do enough. I really think that's going to happen eventually. But, man, how can you watch any of Santos's most recent fights and think this guy's got anything left? Like, you know, Thiago Santos, the reason everybody loved him is because he was the crazy hammer who used to come out, fire kicks, steer into chaos, and like put his opponents out. But even if you wanted to go to the John Jones fight, you know, that went to a split decision, he performed admirably there. But like, I think most people who've watched that fight critically would agree that that had less to do with Santos, you know, fighting so well than it did that Jones kind of just seemed pretty content to just have a walk in the park and almost lost the title because of it. But
I was there live. It was fucking horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And then look, since then, like he got absolutely grapple fucked by Glover. Which, by the way, I mean, Ankalaev doesn't wrestle much, but if he wants to, he's gonna get takedowns and hold him down here. And then you watch a Johnny Walker fight, and it's like the guy. I was excited because I was like, okay, this is the kind of guy that Santos could do Santos things against. And he just, he got outlanded at distance by Johnny Walker. Like, I get it. Johnny Walker's explosive guy. You should not be losing 2 rounds in a technical kickboxing match to him. That's just, you know, the reality if you're going to continue to compete at a high-end level. And he did. And so it's like, as much as I have some issues with Ankalaev's, you know, approach to minutes and his process, he's one of the most technical strikers in the UFC. I think everybody would agree on that. He's quite fast. You know, the guy I believe has only allowed more than 20 landed strikes twice in his career to date, which is wild. You know, Santos is not going to maximize his opportunity at the best of times. And now this version of him, it's like, yeah, I guess he could always land a head kick. I guess the number could be wide at +425, but he just looked so fucked last fight. And Ankalaev, look, I have issues with him, but he's really fucking good. I have more issues with process than I do with his skill level. It's just like very, very, very hard for me to see a path for Santos. I just don't really believe that he's going to come out here and be the guy to outpoint him, given what we've seen in his recent history. So I'm passing. I think you could make a case for over, but even then, Santos is like 38 years old. It's like, it wouldn't shock me if he eats a 2 down the pipe and just gets put out. So I don't know. I hope it ends up being more fun than I'm expecting it to be, but I'm not expecting much, to be honest. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Santos could just play a safe game and just get picked apart. But honestly, I think for his best path, he needs to go old school.
Yeah.
Santos. Get the fuck after this guy. Get in his face. Body kicks, big strikes, make it difficult, make it greasy, make it grindy. Maybe he gets put out with that counter left hook. Maybe he gets put out with that body kick, but playing an outside based game with a guy like Magomed Ankalaev, have fucking fun, bro. You ain't gonna win that fight. You ain't gonna win that fight. So I think that's just kind of the credence to the guy's career and what's made his career in general. He's a guy who's going to go out there and get after guys. He's not a guy who's going to sit there and win fights playing a technical outside base, let alone against a guy like Magomed Ankalaev. So I say if he goes out there and bites the mouthpiece, gets after the guy, I think he does have a shot, though. It ain't fucking too long ago that Ankalaev did get outlanded by Nikita Krylov, where, that Ozdemir did have some success early in that fight too. So I think you can get after the dude. Even I think Longiambula did actually tag Ankalaev at one point in the fight too. So it's like, despite the guy largely managing distance effectively, if you fucking go buck wild on the guy, you have opportunities. But if he's going to sit there and try to play this methodical game with Ankalaev, you're going to lose that fight 100% of the time. But yeah. I think I largely think it's just Ankalaev all day, but it comes down to Santos. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Clams, what do you think?
Yeah, I largely think again Ankalaev all day, because to me, I give more credence to the over here just because this new Santos we've seen, he's not a guy who's gonna he's not trying to force a page. He's not gonna come after you or anything. Ankalaev could just pick him apart for 25 minutes here and take him a decision. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility because he's not a guy that's looking to force a finish either. So to me, I don't like I don't mind the overs here. But again, it's another pass spot because I feel like he could kill him early too. I don't know. Yeah. It's a mess fight. To me, I compared this to the Valentina Shevchenko fights. Are you betting the KO? Are you betting the sub? Are you betting the over? Are you betting the under?
Yeah.
And John, real quick, we were getting so pissed because we both bet Volkan against him and we were about to kill ourselves or whatever. And it's like, well, what happened in that fight? We were so pissed, but at the same time, it's like Ankalaev got that dude's respect so quick. And that's something I should say for myself, I don't want to speak for you, but that we didn't factor in. He got that dude's respect so early and Volkan just shut the fuck down for the rest of the fight. I think that's super impressive and something that can't be ignored here. Volkan,
no, I'm with you.
Pussy or whatever. No, he just got the dude's respect and he just did not do much.
Yeah, I mean, look at Volkan's fight with
he got hurt, right, bro?
Look at Volkan's fight with Rakic, and I mean, the guy was biting the mouthpiece. I agree.
Jerry too.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ankalaev. He gives you a lot of different looks, and I don't. I think we don't. I'm with you, Luke. I think if you told me 100% for a fact Santos is going to come out here, go crazy, and just go kill or be killed, I'd actually have some interest in the plus 425. It's just all the relevant data suggests he's not going to do that. And if he's not going to do that, it's he's going to play a read-based game with Ankalaev. I don't really see how that goes well for him. It's not, right? So
what's crazy to me, though, sorry to cut you off, John, is how is this a fucking main event? How are we getting Thiago? How are they watching Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker main event that fight and then say, you know what, Santos Ankalaev, that makes sense?
There's better fights for Ankalaev. Make it Ankalaev Anthony Smith. At least he'll bite the mouthpiece.
Rakic. You could do Ankalaev Rakic if you wanted to.
I mean, there are much more interesting fights for Ankalaev, and it's I'm with you because we just wasted a year of Ankalaev's career trying to make Kudalaba Ankalaev, and only for him to put him out in 2 minutes. And now we're sitting here, doing Thiago Santos. It's like I guess this is going to be their justification for giving him a title shot after Jerry Glover, but
I think they're pushing him. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
They're pushing him.
Make him look good, take him out.
Established vet, top of the division, good W.
Close fight with John Jones type of thing.
I'll tell you this: if Santos gets put out here and then he gets a main event against Jamal Hill, we fucking riot. Jamal Hill gets served to fucking Anthony Smith. That is what's happening. Okay, that is what I want to see happen. If he gets the fucking rollover Thiago Santos to fight the winner of Magomed Ankalaev and Jiri, I am not going to be a happy person. That's my take here. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. We got UFC London next week. Dan Hooker fight week. It's going to be a fun one. It's a day card. It's going to be awesome. As usual, guys, good luck with your bets tonight, or not tonight, on Saturday afternoon. I've been all over the place tonight. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. As you got me, John, Adam McFox, Luke at SWR_betting, at Lags, at Danny_Lags. And yeah, guys, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week, same time. Take it easy.